Welcome to the broadcast, my dear fruits. We have a royal romper for you today. So much news going on. And then, at the other end of the lollipop, we are going to have a nice, cosy tip jar corner. And if you take a look in the description box, I will leave the timestamp if you want to skip ahead to tip jar corner or avoid it. So all kinds of different fruits in the basket today. And speaking about basketeers, I must compliment you for being absolutely delicious, for filling and flooding my comment section with affection and fruitiness and bringing me so much joy. Thank you for being here and sharing these broadcasts with me. You really do take the biscuit, and I would dunk you into any cup of tea and enjoy the entire experience. Oh, wouldn't a biscuit be lovely? Wouldn't it be lovely? I would also, before we progress, like to welcome hundreds of new subscribers since my last broadcast. Wonderful to have you here in the fruit basket, whether you are a regular viewer or new. Welcome, welcome, my dear. Make yourself at home, but behave yourself. Do you understand? I don't take any nonsense, and I don't care who knows about it, although I get very little from my basketeers. But when I do, they're dealt with. Get it? Got it? Good. Well, cock. Speaking about cocks, Prince William has been hustling around Wales. The Prince of Wales has been in town for St. David's Day, and it was a glorious display of yellow daffodils, red Welsh school uniforms, and red dragons gifted to the Prince. It was a gorgeous, gorgeous sunny spring day at the All Saints School in Wrexham, celebrating Welsh culture and vibrant community spirit of the city. And we got to see William pulling a pint in a pub called the Turf, and he said, "Oh, it's not got a very good head on it." Well, yes, Harry told us about that in Spare, my dear. Never mind. He paid respect at the Gresford Disaster Memorial, and it's the 90th anniversary of that tragic event, which saw 266 men die following an explosion at the mine. And there was much affection shared between William and this gorgeous lady, Ruby, who was affected so deeply by the disaster so many years ago. Ruby seems like a diamond, and we send her all the love in the world, my dears, don't we? And at the Western Marble Arch Synagogue a few days ago, you might have seen Prince William there. He was hearing about the invaluable work of the Holocaust Educational Trust in combating the deeply concerning rise in anti-Semitism in the United Kingdom. He met with the Holocaust survivor, Renee Salt, and young ambassadors from all backgrounds and faiths who have taken part in the Holocaust Educational Trust's flagship Lessons from Auschwitz project. And he had originally planned to attend this event with Catherine, actually, before she was taken poorly, and it was due to happen on Holocaust Memorial Day, but was postponed with just William in attendance. But just William, just fine. The Queen is going to be taking a week away, in the sunshine perhaps, but a private flight has been organised to whisk her off, and she deserves a few days away, doesn't she? She's going to spend a few happy hours, or even perhaps a couple of days with family, and then she'll be enjoying herself abroad. She's been filling in and working hard with her own regular job so much lately, and she will return with all guns blazing back in time for March the 11th, when she is due to represent the King at the Commonwealth Day service at Westminster Abbey. My, that service comes around quickly. I can remember last year's and the year before and the year before. The royal calendar wheels never stop spinning, do they, my dear? Queen Milla was also captured welcoming the First Lady of Ukraine, Olena Zelenska, to Clarence House for a 30-minute meeting on the advice of the Foreign Office. She wore Anna Valentine, and I'm afraid on these occasions, my dear, as nice as it is to watch them together and the Queen giving a fond little tap to the derriere of the First Lady of Ukraine, it's lovely, but I always get distracted by the furnishings, don't you, my dear, of the royal apartments and the royal houses and palaces. wonderful it is. And I was actually looking for little traces in Clarence's house of Robert Kyme, the late Robert Kyme, who was so beloved and such close friends with King Charles, as a matter of fact. And I took a question recently, from a viewer who wanted to reimagine their surroundings in the kind of style that she imagines that I enjoy, because I enjoy, not that you've seen my home, but I enjoy having old things around me, some inherited, some, I suppose you could say, thrifted, all over town. Second-hand objects, these kind of things that bring me joy. But they were worried about budget. And when redecorating and getting in everything new, well, budget should be the least of your concern, really, if you want to do it in that sort of style, because it's one of the easiest styles to pull off on a budget. All you have to do is be a bit canny about where you source and find things from. But it came to mind because sometimes I look at the castles and the country estates and homes when a brochure comes through from Savills, for example, and from various auction houses. But I was looking at a castle that's gone up for sale in Caithness, up in Caithness, and it's going for 25 million. And I was looking through the photographs because I look in them for inspiration, and then I find ways to do it myself on a budget, affordably, and it's fun. The challenge is rather fun, and it's easier to do than various other styles as well, the sort of traditional aristocratic style, if you will. And this particular castle, it had some fairly nice pictures, some that didn't really suit my style or taste, but I found it interesting nevertheless, because I enjoy looking at the colour schemes and the colourways as well. For example, Camfield House, the home of the late Barbara Cartland. I've spoken about that with you before. And my obsession with Barbara Cartland's obsession with the colours coral and turquoise that she paired together in a rather unique way. I love looking at photographs of that place. And I'm actually thinking of doing some of my own home in those colours in future, the coral and turquoise. Going with that theme, but I'll see. Because really it should come from me rather than the likes of somebody else, such as Barbara Cartland. We all get our muses, don't we? We all get our style. Muses and icons. And anyway, in this castle, some of the furnishings are, of course, grand and ornate. Many of them, exceptionally so. Others are rather ordinary looking. And that is the blend that I personally enjoy. I prefer a blend, and one picture I found summed it up so perfectly, more than any other picture I think I've seen from any of these brochures and catalogues of these kind of homes. And that is this one that I'll flash up. It caught the most shabbiest sofa in Christendom, isn't it? The most shabbiest sofa, but it's beloved, you can tell. It's plumptious, you can tell they keep it all plumped up, and it's shagged out, my dear. I should think it's seen quite a number of shagged out moments on that sofa. And I love it. I wouldn't change it for the world. And it gives a soul and a character and a depth and a history to a room, doesn't it, my dear? So if you're ashamed of your sofa, my dear, take a look at that. And don't feel quite so much shame, because there it is in a splendid castle going for 25 million. Shabby old couch. And that also put me in mind of one of the hits of the late Robert Kyme's auction a few months ago now, wasn't it? And one of his items that came up from it was his personal sitting chair, his armchair, done in a sort of distressed red leather. Well, that was very distressed looking, but so desirable. You've got to have the right kind of place to situate it. It wouldn't look right in a sort of immaculate, polished, modern dwelling place. But in the right context, just wonderful. You just want to sort of squish into it, don't you, my dear? Or on somebody's lap on it. It is the Peter Phillips of sofas. You know how I often describe Peter Phillips as a sofa that you just want to jump onto and snuggle into? Well, that is what I see with this particular armchair. there with both of them that I'm talking about, these chairs. But that went for 45 grand, and I'm sure it was worth every penny to them. Lucky old them, eh, my dear? I might have to go down to the local dump or tip and see what I can pull out for free. Now, of course, that had a lot of extra value put on its head because of its association with the bottom of the late Robert Kime, who enjoyed sitting on it, and he was known as one of the most widely admired and respected tastemakers in the kingdom and way beyond, and deeply entrusted by the King and Queen. That's why I'm talking about him, because he reinvigorated and reimagined elements of Clarence House and many of the royal residences, Highgrove and beyond. But it's about taking inspiration from the fact that you can find similar on the cheap that are going to cost you more like 450 rather than 45 grand. Do you know what I mean, my dear? Or even 45 quid. I've shown you a few items here and a few chairs here that I picked up for 15, 25 quid, and they're really quite great. Just takes a bit of practice. People ask, how do you do it? How do you source them? It's in the doing of it. You get to become quickly discerning. It's not something that can just be told. Go there, go here, do that, look there. It becomes instinct, and it is brought out of experience, my dears. But, you know, I'm not just talking about any old chat. You don't want to just find yourself surrounded by tat and bric-a-brac and become one of those hoarders that you see from that series. That is not me. If that's you, that's fine, I suppose. But no, that's not what I'm talking about, my dear. Not tat, but also not a sort of what used to be termed new money vulgarity. I happen to think that new money and old money can be extremely tasteful, both. But traditionally, there is a stereotype attached to new money and that sort of vulgarism. But a piece should tell a story, or rather I should say a room should tell a story, but in a gentle way. Unless you want to be bold, you shouldn't be ramming that story down anybody's necks. It should be a gentle, page-turning atmosphere in the background of a room. Beware of pretension, because pretentiousness is not attractive and it's not comfortable. You want to aim for cosy, no matter the size of your surroundings. The late Margaret Rose used to describe Buckingham Palace as cosy, you know. I've heard her on tape, on film, actually, using that expression. People don't often associate it with Buckingham Palace, but that's how she saw it, cosy. And you can create it wherever you are. And that doesn't mean overcrowded and suffocating and tacky either. Let's march onward, as the Queen did at a reception at Buckingham Palace, where 50 finalists of the kingdom's celebrated writing competition, 500 Words, gathered for an exclusive reception with Her Majesty, and the 6 outstanding winners were awarded in a star-studded ceremony with familiar faces, children beguiled by the Queen. How they adore their Grandma Miller. They adore their Grandma Queen, and they showered her with affection. The competition is supported by BBC Teach and encourages children of all abilities to deep dive into their imagination and write the story that they would love to read in 500 words or less without fear of spelling, grammar or punctuation errors. How novel. And the Queen wore this owl clip. It's not a brooch, it's described as a clip. It's by Van Cleef & Arpels, actually, from their Lucky Animals collection. And I took a look on their website, and they're quite whimsical and rather sweet, although they are £6,000, £7,000 or £8,000 per clip. So it's all right for some, isn't it, my dear? It's all right for some. But she also owns a hummingbird, a hedgehog, a rabbit, a squirrel, a dog and a dove. Lucky for the Queen, my dear, there's the likes of you and I rooting through bargain basement bins at the old Goodwill and at the charity shops. Actually, I wouldn't have it any other way, because that's the fun of it. It's actually more delicious fun than being offered a plethora of fine jewels with no effort at all. Well, what am I saying? I doubt that I'd reject them out of hand. But it's fun to be a magpie. And nothing feels better than finding a bargain and a good deal and finding something that feels like treasure and fills you with wonder when you haven't paid a small fortune for it. Do you understand? I'll briefly mention the Thanksgiving service for the late King Constantine of Greece, only to say that the royals who were able to attend behaved with deep decorum, and that included the Queen, who wore Philip Tracy and a Chanel handlebag in navy, and she wore the Greville ivy leaf clips, and those Greville ivies, by provenance of Dame Margaret, who commissioned them from Cartier, are diamond and platinum, and one of them was made Prix 1930, but the second ivy leaf was created in 1937 specifically to match it and become a pair. But aren't they charming? And Zara wore a Finchley coat by The Fold, and Jimmy Choos to the Trotters, and she toted a navy baguette. At the Grand Prix, we had the spectacle of Fergie, of all people, getting in where royal don't and cozying up to Christian Horner. He's been all over the papers this week, hasn't he, my dear? And Jerry was there, old Ginger Spice, she was there supporting him because of all the scandalous texting rumours that have been going on. Has he been a naughty boy? Hasn't he been a naughty boy? The Tyndalls were there, Peter Phillips was there, and Zara was wearing a long-line tux blazer in pearl with a Lottie bag by Aspinall. And Sarah and Eugenie York were there, having a laugh. What they were wearing, I can only say, is not to my taste. I don't know about you, my dear, but I will be kind and just say, not to my taste. But then, a mink, 2 chandeliers hanging from one's head, and this affair might not be to your taste, or might not be to theirs. So it's horses for courses, isn't it, my dear, in this world? Let them get on with it, I say. But they do look as if they are running from a fire and have been slightly scorched. Maybe that was the theme. As for the Princess Royal, she was spotted at the Headingham Rugby Stadium because she is patron of the MND Association, the Motor Neurone Disease Association, and she was there to thank fundraisers for their support. And she was joined by Rob Burrow, we've seen him before, together with his teammate. He was awarded recently, wasn't he, and honoured. Well, they've been fundraising and they've been increasing awareness of this incurable condition. And I loved the photographs of Anne in red. This one particularly reminded me of some Scottish ladies that I've met over the years. A similar smile. They can have this broad Scottish smile. The red was divine. A Windsmore peacoat she wore with a trim of black leather. Just always has a slight kinky edge. I've noticed with Anne, something kinky. In this case, a black leather trim or some kinky boots. But yeah, I get it. And then she was off to Namibia for the state funeral of President Haga Geingob. And she wore a triple strand of pearls, a hand-me-down from the late Queen Elizabeth, and a gold ribbon brooch, which is gold and diamond set. I think that was actually gifted to her by her parents. And she wore pearl and gold earrings that we've seen many times since they were gifted to her in 1969. It was actually during a moment when one of the Esso ships was baptised. She was presented with these earrings and she wore them on the cover of Vogue, and she's worn them many times over the years, but most becoming. A few little events popped up for dear Princess Beatrice, including a round-table panel in London in honour of Student Mental Health Week. That sounds like a barrel of laughs. She was also seen curling in St. Moritz with Edo, so she's getting a lot of fun in there, those Mapley Motsies. She wore a Loro Piana, icery parka, and milky sneakers. Cosy. OK, that's the royal romper, done and dusted today. Now we will travel to a distant time and place. Actually, somewhere beyond time and place. It's a place of magic. A place of magic and wonder. And I invite you to take my hand and come with me. Travel to Tip Jar Corner. Welcome to Tip Jar Corner, everybody, and thank you so very much if you have visited the tip jar and sent me a treat yourself. It's very much appreciated. I have been appreciating, because I'm going to start with a book, I have been appreciating a woman that I'd never heard of before by the name of Hannah Hawkswell. Many of you will know her, especially those of you perhaps in their autumn or winter seasons here in the kingdom, because she came to public attention in the 1970s, the early 1970s. And I've been fascinated and charmed going down, what is it they call it, a rabbit hole of Hannah Hawkswell material. She came up on my YouTube feed on one of the rare moments when it actually works and suggests and throws things out that you've got to enjoy. She came up then because I'm always looking at archive footage and material and nostalgic country programs, you know, that sort of thing. And I will put the link to one of these videos, at least maybe two of them, in the description box below. But the one I saw first was Hannah Goes to Town from 1977. But that was actually following up on an earlier documentary. That's the other one I'll put in the description box, called Too Long a Winter in 1972. That's when she was actually discovered. She was one of the people in that documentary. And she looked like a little old lady, especially from a distance, little slip of a thing. And she actually wasn't when she came up in that documentary. Was she in her 40s? I can't remember off the top of my head. But she only died, I was surprised to read, a few years ago, in 2018. She was still with us, living in a nursing home. She had spent her final years in a cottage. But a fascinating story, a fascinating personality. It's about, for me, it was about the charismatic beauty of a sort of old-fashioned charm and grace, really, as well as a unique character. She was an English farmer who had lived in the same family farmhouse as many generations before her on 80 acres in Balders, is that it? Baldersdale, yes, County Durham. And she developed a relationship with Barry Cockcroft, the director of the original documentaries. And she made a few, I think there's more of her. There's quite a few on YouTube of her going around the world. She became a mini celebrity of a sort. It actually put me in mind of Quentin Crisp's journey, who didn't become a star on a much larger scale than Hannah Hawkswell, but he was didn't become one. He was sort of a, what is it they call it, an undiscovered treasure, or a hidden gem. He didn't become one till he was getting on, let's put it that way. And she was another one of these gems. She lived there in this isolated farmhouse with no running water, with no electricity, no money. I mean, tiny amounts of money. They ask at one point what she's been eating, what she has, and it was usually one slice of bread and butter for lunch. Her face actually looked extraordinarily hale and hearty and healthy, and I kept thinking to myself, you know, if she was a modern sort of woman, even though she strikes one as a sort of old soul and as an old lady in some ways, she would have scrubbed up something wonderful if she had gone down that route and wanted to live and dress and do the makeup of a modern woman. I'm delighted that she didn't. Gorgeous exactly as she was, wouldn't change a single thing. But a very lonely life, really. But she, of course, enjoyed the comfort of the natural, beautiful surroundings next to a gorgeous moonlit reservoir where the moonlight hits it. The trees, you know, she was one with nature, and she said that she can't be separated from it in her heart. It's where she belonged. And she tended to the cattle there and various creatures. She tried to. And she was really an emblem of charm and grace, as I tell you. And at one moment in this documentary, she is invited as a guest of honour to a dinner at the Savoy, a hotel here in the kingdom of great notoriety. And that was interesting actually to look, because I've stayed at the Savoy and I know the Savoy, and I worked in the buildings next to the Savoy for a length of time, so I know that very well, and I know the pub next to that very well, the Coal Hole. And I'm digressing, but it was interesting to see inside a hotel like the Savoy back in those days, because I mean it was lovely, it was gorgeous, but I mean this sense of luxury now that you have to the sense of luxury then, it was a very sort of old school, low key luxury back in the 70s. I wouldn't have even really called it high end. I'm sure some of the suites might have been, but it was just a different demand on hotels of various eras, I suppose. Or that one, anyway. At the Savoy, she was introduced to the Duchess of Gloucester. And we see her all the time now, and I've brought her to the attention of many people that didn't know who she was, especially some abroad. And you might have been interested to see her earlier in life, looking, rather chic and rather glamorous and greeting. They had most gorgeous, pleasant exchange, very civil, and she was so lovely. They were lovely to each other, but she was so lovely to Hannah Hawkswell. Interested to see her, and she had heard all about her, and she was asking her questions about how she's coping. It was a gorgeous royal moment, which is why one reason I'm tying it in here with the broadcast, but also because it is one of the books that I picked up. This one I did not pick up from a charity shop or from a second-hand bookstore, although it is second-hand. I found it online. I think it was either eBay or Amazon. Originally £14.95. I think I paid about 4 or 5 quid for it. And it was written together with Barry Cockcroft, who directed those documentaries, who she had a great fondness for, actually, and very much respected. And I'll flash a few images of the photography up on the screen. Hannah Hawkswell is unquestionably the first lady of the Yorkshire Dales, a curious, ragged figure who was admired to the point of reverence by many thousands of people. It's more than 16 years since she first appeared before the British public, bent against a howling blizzard and dragging a cow behind her in a now legendary documentary made for Yorkshire Television and the ITV network by Barry Cockcroft called Too Long a Winter. Her nun-like tranquillity and patient acceptance of a way of life so harsh and deprived proved an inspiration to others, which, although impossible to analyse, deeply affected many people. Hannah has a unique ability to communicate. Its potency never seems to diminish, and she is constantly referred to in the media. She has left her Yorkshire isolation only twice in her 62 years, once to be a guest of honour at the Woman of the Year lunch in the Savoy Hotel, London, and once to Buckingham Palace for a garden party. Now, for the first time, she tells the full story of her life at Low Birkhat Farm in the remote community of Baldersdale. And she builds a fascinating and detailed picture, not just of her own family and neighbours, but of a way of life now vanished in a dale which, in Hannah's youth, supported a school, a chapel, and a public house, none of which survives today. Hannah's home does still survive today, by the way. When she was eventually forced into selling it, it was taken and renovated, but very beautifully from the pictures I've seen, and very sympathetically and improved upon by a family who lived there and then only sold it again for several million a few years ago, perhaps a decade ago. It did well, although she never returned to it once she left. It is, as one might expect, a very moving and colourful story which illuminates all the corners of Hannah Hawkswell's existence, revealing her private thoughts and recording the milestones, the very seasons, in fact, of her life. And of course, the very name of this book appealed to me, Seasons of My Life, because that is what I speak of all the time here on the broadcast, isn't it, my dear? I split life up into 25-year instalments, if you're new here. We have the spring season up to 25, 25 to 50, you're going through summer, 50 to 75, you're enjoying the beautiful embrace of autumn, and then the splendid, magnificent, beautiful winter season from 75 onwards. And it seems that Hannah, being a woman of nature and of the country and of a romantic spirit, feels the same way. And as ever, we can link everything back to royalty, including Hannah Hawkswell's land, now known as Hannah's Meadows, because she employed traditional farming practices, no reseeding, no artificial fertilizers, and it's known as one of the least improved uplands, in fact, the least improved upland in Durham, least improved being a good thing because it results in very rich floral composition, rare species such as the frog orchid and the adder's tongue, various beautiful flora and fauna and wildflowers galore, my dear, and buttercups. It's very famous for its sprinkling of buttercups. But her farm, you see, originally was bought in 1988 by Durham Wildlife Trust, and now it has re-emerged and renamed under the name Hannah's Meadows. It's an area of outstanding beauty, outstanding natural beauty and nature reserve. It's a real legacy of hers, and it was picked up by the Coronation Meadows project that was launched by Prince Charles, as he was, around the time of the late Queen's 60th anniversary on the throne. And seeds from these kind of ancient meadows are used, and the meadow is used as a donor site for others. But wouldn't Hannah be absolutely thrilled with that? A creepy crawly necklace. I always find jewellery with bugs a little bit creepy, but rather fun and whimsical as well. I've got a few spidery things, but I did spot this and picked it up. It's not one of my favourites because the chain looks a bit cheap and modern for my liking, I'm afraid. I think it's a rather modern piece, but I did think that it would come in useful on a broadcast where I'm wearing green and want to show you a different jewel. So here we have this spider with its emerald green abdomen and 8 sparkly legs plated in gold and shining with diamante and 2 jetty black eyes, or whatever spiders have there. Ooh! I spotted this attractive little painting, which is an original and not a print, and it was going for £5, and I couldn't resist. There's something about the colour of the peachy, pucey, ambery roses with splashes of white that I very much enjoy. And I like the oil paint. I can't quite make out the name, but I think it says Robert Cox. That might not be correct. It's too faded for me to see, actually. And the frame is too plasticky for my liking, so it'll probably get replaced at some point in the future. There is a fine line. But it's the romance of the roses, or whatever flowers they are. You can tell me if it's something else, but it's the romance of it. One of my fantasies, apart from having a turquoise and coral room, is to have a room filled only with oil paintings of roses and the occasional nude here and there. I want a romantic adventure, a romantic fantasy. And also, in the same shop, at the same moment, I spotted a little easel going that I thought will always come in handy for propping up the occasional picture or photograph, probably something larger than this one actually. But this kind of thing always comes in handy, even when I'm displaying things to you in a broadcast or want to display something beside me, or I could prop up my notes on it, couldn't I too? So, something useful and practical. I don't think that I mentioned the wreath behind me, and that was a very happy find that I picked up second hand, simply because I absolutely adore the colour of it. This sort of burgundy, pinky with splashes of light green leaves. I think it's gorgeous, and I'm not sure what flowers they're supposed to be, but they do put me in mind of the hydrangea look, and I've got a few blue ones of them going on behind me. I love the hydrangea. I've become such a fan. Madonna famously hates hydrangeas. She was recorded saying, "I hate hydrangeas," when she was given some by a fan. Well, I allow her own taste, but I think they're just absolutely heavenly and gorgeous, and I'm going to buy more artificial hydrangeas to place around me for the broadcast in future. I think there's going to be some phases coming up over the summer. I want hydrangeas galore, just surrounding them, drowning in hydrangeas, my dear, or blooms of that kind of ilk. Anyway, this was one that I simply couldn't resist. And look at this stone grey candelabrum. Isn't he divine? He has so much character. I cannot wait to see him illuminated with candles on a dark night or a twilight moment over supper with a friend or my companion or an amour. And I think it's wonderful outside, on the terrace, the balcony, in the walled garden or the courtyard. Perfect. And of course, I will remember in the future to have it at my side when it is ablaze with candles for you to enjoy as well. Of course, my dear. It'll be a good one for the autumn. Some pretty vintage earrings here with shades of blue, 3 strands to hang off each lobe, studded with diamante and finished with foxtails of sapphire. Glittery, glitzy, and perhaps a little glamorous. And also in a bargain basement bin, I found some bindies going for 50p each. So they can dress up one of my Indian looks when I bring that to you. I also saw some more fabulous, sometimes I'll come to you, and I found some earlier in the year, didn't I? Really beautiful Indian or Eastern dresses, almost like saris, but much heavier. Wedding gowns from that sort of continent and from Asia. Well, they had some more going. They had a lot more going, but they had raised the price a lot up into the 30 and 40 and 50 pound range, and I don't see that as a bargain, I'm afraid, my dear. As lovely as they were, I wasn't going to go there, so I just comforted myself with some cheap old bindies, my dear, but it means that I can dress up the odd outfit here and there, can't I? I don't tend to wear many beads here on the broadcast, do I, my dear, with necklaces, but I picked this one up and I don't regret it. I like the black, grey, silvery beads around it. There's a simplicity to the piece that I enjoy, and I actually think there is something rather chic about it. I think that it would look exquisite with a cream cashmere sweater, but we shall see how I decide to dress it up in future. Another thing I will dress up is this pendant, which I got because it's a wonderful size, and I really enjoy the delicious champagne hues of the stones. Rather floral in design, on a lattice coloured gold and on a very long chain. The playful light bounces off of it and gently glows and shimmers. Very classic, very classy, very maid come wipe my arsey. £1.99 from Oxfam. £1.99. Find so many of these. What was the original price? This is Highgrove Portrait of an Estate by HRH, the Prince of Wales, and Charles Clover. £20 originally. £20. The book about the land for the 21st century, to inspire, to challenge, to inform. The Prince of Wales has spent the last 10 years trying to turn his Highgrove estate in the Cotswolds into a model of environmentally benign farming and gardening. Highgrove Portrait of an Estate records the successes, failures and lessons to be shared not only by gardeners, horticulturalists and farmers, but by everyone interested in the countryside and the environment at large. In a fascinating introductory section, the Prince of Wales spells out what his vision for Highgrove has been, and in a concluding chapter considers the ways in which Highgrove might be developed as a blueprint for the future. He writes about his vision for the countryside with infectious enthusiasm and passion. This provocative book is gloriously illustrated throughout. And this is another book I found in the same second-hand shop, but this one I got entirely for comfort, not for education or for glorious pictures, but for comfort, because I rather liked the title and the picture, and it was only, well, it was £2.99. In a Wiltshire village, scenes from rural Victorian life, and as you know, I spent a few days in Wiltshire, various gorgeous parts of it this past summer, including Laycock, where Queen Camilla has Ray Mill just around the corner. And the thought of them warmed the cockles of my heart, so I'm hoping this book will go on to do the same thing, because this is selected from the writings of Alfred Williams by Michael Justin Davis, and from South Marston Village School, where farm labourers' children bring their dinner in little baskets or handkerchiefs and eat it sitting down under the hedgerows in summer, Alfred Williams, aged 8, started work in the fields in 1885. His job was to lead the horses, to carry the wooden bottles of ale to and from the farm, or rake up the hay with the girls. Later he would cycle to Swindon daily to work as a hammerman in the railway factory, but his heart remained in the land. As for luxury and worldly ambition, Williams wrote, "I would far rather live in Jackie Bridges' bare old plaster cottage, eat simple food, dress poorly, and be free with it." In this book he conjures up real village characters whom he came to know and honour. Here is the old shepherd with skill, knowledge and feeling too. See the life in his hands. Patsy, the watercress man, slept in fields under a haystack until, in the dead of winter, he was forced to take refuge in the workhouse, a place of tragedy. The miller does not speak very much, but you will easily perceive the affection he has for his wheel and the machinery. Through these pages we can join the happy country people in the great feast at harvest home. We can peep into the village smithy to see the man at the forge and anvil, to listen to the roar of the bellows and the ring of metal, and to watch the fiery, fizzing sparks swish out all round. And we can stand beside Tommy, the vigorous, deaf old sexton, as he tolls the big bell for funerals. The vibration almost lifted you off your feet. A whole rich human way of life, now vanished, comes alive again in this book. Well, every chapter comes to an end, and it's time for us to turn the page on this chapter until the next one, my dear, because the book of the River Broadcast certainly is not done with. And so, whether it's next chapter or next volume, I look forward to seeing you the next time you pick me off of your library shelf. Give me a dust down and give me a good old reading, because I'll be here to read you and everybody else for filth, my dears. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate your fruity presence. Thank you if you sent a tip jar treat my way, and if you left a lovely comment. Ta-ra, my darlings. Enjoy and toodle pip.